Fantasy Finish Line podcast. Tonight is the 2021 season kickoff. It's June 23rd, 2021.
Cheers, Jason.
Cheers, David. All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. It is the Fantasy Finish Line podcast. I am Jason Evans, joined as always by David Biggs. Dave, say hi to the people.
I feel like you almost forgot who I was there for a second, but I'm here. I'm still here. Hello, everybody.
It's always an awkward sentence, and I've never figured out how to put it out right. I am joined, as always, by David Biggs. It just doesn't sound right when I'm saying it.
Yeah, I get you.
So we're back for the 2021 NFL season. Some new things this year. Well, we're on YouTube for the second year in a row, and we're on video. We'll be on video all year long this year. I don't know if we started the season on video last year. I don't think we did. I think we picked it up about halfway through.
Yeah, so to the best of my recollection, I think it was episode 5 or 6 in which we started doing it on video, and we had a lot of people joining us and asking questions, and that's super great.
Yeah.
And even the people that came on to argue with us or give us some information that wasn't even real, we still appreciate you anyway.
Yeah, and
a little bit.
If you are joining us live, you can go to the chat room and say hi to us, ask us questions about what's going on. During the season, obviously ask us lineup questions and drop questions, all of that fun stuff. We'll do a little bit of the more abstract, longer term thinking for fantasy football tonight, and just kind of talk about some of the changes that have come about. We're gonna go over 8 teams that have the most changes or have been the most impacted by the offseason so far, whether it be the draft or their free agent acquisitions, or perhaps players they've lost. And so, to get started, Dave gave us a couple of notes here. We have 78 days from the NFL starting. I believe that would be the Thursday night kickoff then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so 78 days, a little bit over 2 months, and then we can all make fun of each other and lambast each other and make fun of each other's moms.
I mean, that's going to start during the drafts, let's be honest. I hope so anyways.
Well, this is the precursor to all of the great fantasy football fun. It's just more fun, just a different kind of fun.
Okay, and you have informed me and thus the rest of us that NFL players have until 4 p.m. next Friday to opt out of the 2021 season.
Right.
Do you think anyone's going to do it this year?
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't want to get too into the coronavirus thing since everyone's been into it for a year and a half almost, right? But the good news is that for the most part, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that impactful this year as far as attendance, people going to games, the players themselves. But there are some issues that will pop up still.
Yeah.
There's still going to be a CVD IR to the best of my knowledge. And there's a change that they made for this year as opposed to last year, which is that those players who decide to opt out but don't have any medical reason to do so will get no stipend. So last year it was $150,000.
Right.
This year there's no stipend since there's not really a reason for them to do so, and as far as the NFL is concerned.
Okay.
So I think, as you know, there's some stuff going on in Buffalo and some other teams of people that have opposing viewpoints. And right now, this discussion...
No, Dave, they just love freedom.
Well, right now, this discussion is just a discussion, but soon it will be more than that. Soon it'll end up being people maybe not playing, maybe retiring, maybe getting in lawsuits. We hope that doesn't happen. But
nobody's forcing the vaccine on anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as I can tell.
Right, and I don't think that's...
And that's a politically charged thing that we'll pretty much stay away from.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still going to be a thing. There will, in some regards, be conversation about this for a while.
Yeah. I suppose if drinkfive had a stance, it would be to listen to your doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at another situation going on in Houston. Deshaun Watson has been embroiled, if you will, which is a very...
Is it like a Burger King
term?
It's
a very journalistic term that is only ever used in headlines and things like that. In controversy, he's embroiled in controversy. There's lots of pending lawsuits, I think, is the correct term at the moment. and a pending suspension probably. And it sounds like it's a situation that is not close to being resolved, which is the only way that I could put it.
Yeah, so all the news that I've seen, some people have said, he may play as early as next year or even this year. There's been no statement from the NFL yet as far as whether he'll be put on the commissioner's exempt. What do you call it? Just a list, an exempt list.
The commissioner's exempt list, which is just basically you're not playing for now.
Yeah.
I forget who was on it most recently in a big deal,
But ultimately, the problem here is that they're not talking to the witnesses or the accusers in this case until later this year or next year, and the case isn't actually scheduled to be heard, at least currently, until next year. And because of that, and because of all the situation and drama surrounding it, we might not get any kind of resolution to this until the following year or the year after. Depends on how long the bureaucracy it drags out, right? So there's some problems here, and I think the commentary on Sports Edge, which was more recently Roto World, but then bought by NBC, unceremoniously, but still, it's Sports Edge now, so I'm going to call it by its proper name. They have said that
I would have kept calling it Roto World. So okay.
They have said, is this familiar to you, or is this news?
I have the page up. No, I knew that it was purchased. I feel like NBC has owned Roto World for many years.
But they didn't
rebrand it until this past offseason.
But this is a great,
or late last year.
This is a great resource that we've used for a long time. Roto World that has this up-to-date knowledge, current events.
Plus.
So I'm sure that they're going to make.
Don't forget the plus.
Soon enough, there'll be a $3 a month subscription rate or something. I might actually pay it because the news is awesome.
You know what? It is what I use to look at multiple times a day during the season in order to get the most up-to-date news. You have told us in the past that the place where they get their news is going to be all the beat reporters on Twitter, for the most part.
Yeah, they're basically aggregators, but they do it so quickly that it's up there almost instantly.
Yeah, give me a good aggregator. I don't need to be the earliest of the early adopters.
Yeah. So, what they had said, or at least the commentator had said, which I somewhat agree with, is that this is either going to turn into something where Deshaun is guilty, and it becomes this huge, horrible case, and then there's all sorts of repercussions that befall him, or he's going to be innocent, and there's going to be this giant issue with the NFL having
And his team.
Yeah, and not only that, but the fact that that he kind of lost or would have lost like multiple years in what they would call his prime, in his position.
He's certainly been defamed if it turns out that he did nothing wrong.
But and I don't have an opinion on this in particular, except that since we're going to bring up Dynasty a couple times during this show, if I was a Dynasty owner, and I happen to be, I think you could sell him for extremely cheap right now. People are still picking him up in startup leagues as a quarterback 2 or a quarterback 3 for their team. But Deshaun Watson is, as far as his talent level, is a top 5 quarterback. So I don't see any way that you could reasonably in a dynasty league let that guy go, for pennies. So it's just, unfortunately for owners, you just got to hold on to him and see what the heck
He will
happens.
play football again. If you're a dynasty owner, you just got to sit on it.
Yeah.
So speaking of dynasty teams, we're going to have a little fun question to get started tonight. And if you're listening, maybe you guys can chime in. I know that some of the people in the chat room are in dynasty leagues with us. So Dave, who is one guy that you just can't seem to cut from your dynasty roster? Because we're coming up upon the dynasty rookie drafts. We have one this week. We have another one in a couple of weeks. And you're going to have to cut down some of the players from last year in order to make room for the new players coming up.
Do you have one as well that you're thinking of?
Yeah, we've got, we're each in
Because I have
2
one
leagues.
already.
Yeah, you can give me one and I'll give you one of mine.
Well, so my guy's easy, right? And that's Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins. And I drafted him in a league. And Sammy Watkins has been good occasionally. One year he was really good. Most years he gets injured or is very disappointing. And this particular year, he was cut or traded, I forget exactly the situation, to the Baltimore Ravens. So from Kansas City to Baltimore, and I just can't imagine a scenario in which Sammy Watkins is some standout player on the Ravens.
It's funny. I read your generic off-season means nothing headline. Sammy Watkins is the best player in camp right now.
Yes.
Headline earlier today. So it was funny that you brought that up.
He's a talented guy, but you know, every time I keep him on my team and try to put him in the lineup, he'll get you 2 points or he'll sit out the game. Or,
Right.
Yeah.
So
Travesty.
in a 2-quarterback league, I've got Jarrett Stidham, and I've held on to him for too long, so I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and just cut him. And his former teammate Rex Burkhead, I think, is gonna be on the chopping block as well.
There you go.
So there are guys that I have had a hard time cutting in the past that they're just gonna have to go this year. I don't have a place. I don't have a good justification for keeping them. They'll always have a place in my heart.
Well, as far as I can tell, when we have these guys that are not making it into your starting lineup ever, you know, and they still are there year over year, then it's just time for them to be replaced by anyone with upside.
So, in my other league, it's a single quarterback league, full PPR though. I've got Miles Boykin, who I drafted in 2019, has sat on my bench for 2 years now, and he's ranked WR 108 according to Flea Flicker. I can't imagine that on a team where I have great wide receiver starters that Miles Boykin is going to ever provide any kind of value to me.
Right, I don't think so either.
So I think he's going to get cut, and I'll pick another wide receiver in the draft this year that'll sit on my team for 2 years and do nothing.
Well, just try to pick someone with upside that at least gives you the opportunity to maybe sell him to an unsuspecting cohort in your league. But yeah, that's tough. We could have a whole podcast, and we probably will, about guys to cut as these deadlines approach from the regular season. And even in our regular redraft podcast throughout the season, we often have a cut list segment. And
that is a fun segment.
What's the most important thing on a week-to-week basis? It's who you pick up and who you cut. It's your team management.
Absolutely.
That will get you to the finals, or you'll be on the chopping
block. If at least you can keep the good players out of other people's hands, you have a really good chance at winning.
Well,
so let's move on to the teams that we want to talk about who have made lots of changes for the year. Like I said, some of this is going to be draft picks, so we're going to analyze each of these 8 teams based on their new draft picks, their departed players, their acquired free agents, and their management, whether or not they're under new management, if perhaps they're going to have a new focus.
And these are in no particular order. We didn't rank them.
Absolutely correct.
I'm glad you said that's correct, and you're like, no, I ranked them. This is what I
So, the first team is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Their new draft picks, obviously, round 1, pick 1, quarterback Trevor Lawrence. So, ever since he started playing college football, he's been projected to probably be the number 1 overall pick in this draft. I think it was always known that this is when he would end up coming out. He did win the 2019 National Championship game against Alabama, one of the few teams ever to beat Alabama in the championship game, so he's got that under his belt. The Jaguars have not had a good quarterback for, I don't know how long, since Mark Brunell, maybe? Since one good year of Blake Bortles.
There was a guy you really liked the other year, though. You were.
Well, there's Gardner Minshew.
You were on the Minshew bandwagon.
Oh, yeah, I love the Minshew mania. He's still on the team. He just is the backup.
Yeah.
And that's probably a great backup for Trevor Lawrence.
Justifiably a backup, even though he had a string of good games. It doesn't look like.
Still went 1 in 15.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the Jaguars finally have a proper franchise player to build behind. Trevor Lawrence is the sort of once in a generation talent, according to the scouting reports. One of the scouting reports that I had read compared him to compared his skills right now to Peyton Manning's skills in his second season on the Colts, which is just blows my mind. Trevor Lawrence also a better athlete than Peyton Manning was at that point in his career. Certainly than Peyton Manning is today. So, another pick that they had, round 1, pick 25, Travis Etienne. He is a surprise to me that they would pick a running back, but I think that Urban Meyer really liked him and has a plan to use him because, last year we saw James Robinson have great success, probably the best undrafted free agent running back season that we've ever seen. So Etienne is the second running back off the board in the draft. I think right behind, didn't the Steelers take one at 24?
Sounds right.
So yeah, right behind him there. But like I said, it's clear Urban Meyer is going to have a plan for him if they're going to spend such a high draft pick on him. They spent the 45th overall pick on an offensive tackle. They picked up a tight end and a wide receiver in the 5th and 6th rounds. So I really like these guys at the top of the draft. The tackle, Etienne and Lawrence, to be playing probably right away. They're going to influence the team immediately. It's going to have a huge impact. They're going to be better than 1-15. You know, I pretty much can guarantee that right now. So I think Lawrence will be the starter in week 1, and you know, you're going to see the Jacksonville Jaguars be a playoff team within the next 2 or 3 years, but not right away. They'll probably be a 6-11 now. Now that the NFL is switching to 17 games in the regular season.
Which we didn't talk about much, but it doesn't really have a lot of impact in most leagues because it'll just extend the regular season for 1 game.
Right, I think that's what will happen for most leagues, unless they want to start doing 2-week championships or something like that, which perhaps is worth looking at again. But I don't care for it. I would rather do a 14-week regular season.
You know, sometimes we have shows about commissioning leagues or dynasty leagues or redraft leagues or the different types of leagues or the rules within those leagues.
Yeah.
I've been interested for a while because I've only really ever played leagues that have 1 championship and then you're done. There's actually some that I've seen that do 3 weeks. I kind of like the idea of you know, a team doing well over a period of time, maybe taking precedence over a team doing well once. But then again, most of the leagues that we've been in have a little bit of parity with the actual NFL or any sports league, in that if you lose, then you're out.
Sure, and that's what's great about the playoffs.
We're not doing best of 7, you know what I mean?
Right. This is not baseball. We're not doing a series.
That's right.
You're one and done. So players departing from the Jaguars were Tyler Eifert, he was tight end, D.D. Westbrook, wide receiver, Chris Thompson, running back, kind of all-around guy, Keelan Cole, wide receiver. I don't see the team missing any of these guys. You know, they got Tim Tebow at tight end to replace Tyler Eifert. No big deal there. So acquired free agents: Marvin Jones, wide receiver; Philip Dorsett, wide receiver; Carlos Hyde, running back; and for you, Dave, I threw in Laquan Treadwell.
Well, there's another guy that I did have on my dynasty league for too many years before dropping him, but he is just a speck of the radar.
I don't expect him to
dearly
make
departed.
53-man roster.
He's a talented wide receiver, and he actually did
He's
some
a talented
work
athlete.
I
don't know if he's a talented wide receiver.
He did some work on the Vikings, but you're right. He had never developed into an every snap player. So
yeah. So there's a lot of youth on this team. I understand bringing the veteran presence on the field. I'm talking about Marvin Jones now. He is, aside from Tebow, the oldest player on the team. So I believe that when they break camp and they have 53 players, Marvin Jones will be the oldest player on the team. I don't see any way that Tim Tebow makes the roster on this team.
but he's like literally the neighbor of Urban Meyer. So
also, Urban Meyer was the coach at Florida when Tim Tebow won all those championships and Heisman trophies there.
we'll say this: if he doesn't make the team, then he's never playing
He's just
football again.
throwing him a bone. You know, just getting his old pal into camp for 1 more year.
You're gonna hate it when Tim Tebow's their tight end, aren't you?
I'm not going to care that much unless he Tebows.
Because he'll be a tight end / quarterback somehow. But what I
They
agree,
would not do that to Trevor Lawrence.
I agree with you that most likely Tebow is not of concern.
So I like Marvin Jones here. I think that he's the kind of guy that can stay on the field all game long. He can have a very positive impact on the team. They're a very young team. They had Laviska Shenault last year. They had, I better pull up my depth charts.
Well, the bad thing about depth charts in June is that none of them are right.
Well, and they're all, like, they all contain 80 players, 90 players.
Yeah.
So we have, give me depth chart in our roster. DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault listed as the starters. Philip Dorsett listed as a backup. That makes sense to me. So I like Jones. Last year, he had the most targets of his career. He had a career high 68.1% catch percentage. He scored 9 touchdowns in 3 of the last 4 seasons, and presumably he was like the 3rd target on the Lions, unless there was injuries ahead of him. So I think he's still going to be fantasy relevant because Lawrence is not going to be the kind of rookie that only can throw to like 1 or 2 guys. He is going to be the kind of guy who right away can dish the ball all around the field. So I like Marvin Jones as probably a mid-round draft pick. So they are under new management. The Jaguars are. Urban Meyer, you love him, you hate him, but you have to acknowledge the fact that he's one of the most successful and influential college football coaches in the last 20 years. This is the first time he's getting an NFL head coaching gig, he's coming out of retirement. Technically, he was the coach at Ohio State, and then retired and did just television. So, one of only 3 coaches who led multiple teams to college football championships. The other 2, Nick Saban and Pop Warner.
Pop Warner.
Pop Warner, an actual person, Pop Warner. We did forget, pardon us for being a little rusty, to talk about what we're drinking tonight. So what Dave has just finished, and I'm still drinking, is the Pursuit of Freedom from the Revolution Brewing. It's one of their sour series beers. I think it's the newest one. It's a session sour ale with watermelon and natural mint flavor. So I'm a big fan of this one. And Dave, what did you just crack open?
Yeah, that series is good, and shout out to one of my friends and compatriots in fantasy football, a couple of leagues that I'm in, Vince, because he kind of put me on this lower calorie IPA. There's a whole bunch of these kinds of beers. He didn't have this particular one, but this is a Firestone Walker beer. It's called Firestone Flyjack, which is a hazy India Pale Ale, one of my favorite kinds of beer, but only 96 calories per can. So, not to get into it too much, but sometimes you go to a brewery and you get an IPA and you don't know that thing is as much as like half a sandwich.
Well, it's nice that, you can have a low-calorie beer that still has flavor.
Exactly.
I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. I love your assessment. We got to move on and check out some of these other teams. Did you have anything else to add about the Jaguars?
No, let's talk about another football team.
All right, so Washington football team. New draft picks after selecting some highly graded players on defense to support their offensive line, which is some of these teams that I'm going to go over. We're not going to talk about all of the picks that they made for obvious reasons, right? We're going to talk about the guys that are more fantasy relevant and in offensive positions, especially where applicable. But because we're talking about the teams that were most improved, some of those teams might have been so also because of the work that they did on the defense or the offensive line. And the offensive line work really helps the quarterback. So after the first 2 picks that they made on the draft, the Washington football team selected De'Ami Brown from North Carolina. That's pick 82, round 3. He was rated actually as an early second-round prospect from a whole lot of scouts, but for some reason fell to the next round a little bit later. And this is later in round 3. So it was kind of surprising that happened. The funny thing is, the Redskins actually, the football team, actually picked up Terry McLaurin in the draft that they selected him in, and he was also one of those people that kind of fell a little bit. So in some respects, over the past couple of years, the football team has done a good job of selecting some of these wide receivers or skill position players that have dropped down in the draft. De'Ami is an outside receiver who has good hands. He stretches the field, excels at double moves, and he'll allow for opportunities to be opened up elsewhere, which is really great for a guy like McLaurin, who didn't have anyone else on the team that was vying for attention from the opposing secondary.
That's true.
So it'll be nice to have that guy there. There are more people that I'll talk about shortly that they added as well. You'll be surprised at the wide receiver room on the football team. The round 4 selection of tight end John Bates from Boise State was pretty unexpected. He is a decent blocking tight end, but he was actually rated by most to fall into like the 6th or 7th round. So a lot of people looked at that selection from the football team as a bad one. Of course, they were looking for depth at the tight end position, but I think that it was kind of a reach for them. And their final pick was used on a player named Dax Milne from BYU, who actually caught tons of passes from Zach Wilson, one of the highest-rated quarterbacks in the draft, and he profiles as a possession slot receiver. Unfortunately for him, the receiver room is quite full at the moment. In fact, they just acquired someone from Tennessee to play that exact position, so I don't think Dax is really going to be seen out on the field in 2021.
Yeah.
Robert Foster signed on with the Dolphins. He was on the football team last year. And Alex Smith...
I didn't even realize he was on the team last year.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was pretty much McLaurin and Logan Thomas and
Antonio Gibson.
Yeah.
I got an interesting stat about Antonio Gibson.
Go ahead.
In college, Antonio Gibson had more receptions than carries.
Oh, that's interesting.
So expect him to really break out in the passing game this year.
Okay.
Because it certainly wasn't the case last year. They used him as like a first and second down, like just pounded in there running back. But that's definitely not his skill set. Not his primary skill set, anyways.
Well, if it works, it works. And
it worked. It definitely worked. I grant you that.
Alex Smith, who was one of Jason's favorite players for a long time, and it seemed like a good all-around guy. He was released and then retired in April after that release. It turns out later that he had mentioned several things about the football team that he wasn't very happy with how the coaches treated him. Even when he was coming back and starting for the team, he felt like the coaches weren't rooting for him. That there were issues there.
Yeah.
I felt like probably, and I'll talk about this later, it was just sort of the end to a lot of players that had been there for a while, with new coaches coming in and not interested at all in the way that things were being run.
Yeah, and you're never gonna hear the coach's point of view. Like, the coaches almost never talk about players.
Yeah.
So you never know what if the players are divas.
Well,
stuff like that.
I mean, Ron Rivera, etc., must have been endlessly frustrated with the quarterback situation on the football team.
Ron Rivera was this last year. Ron Rivera coached his team to the playoffs, and they almost beat Tampa Bay. And Ron Rivera beat cancer last year.
Yeah.
He had a hell of a year.
He did a couple good things last year. Acquired free agents. Let's talk about the other wide receiver, or some of the other wide receivers that were added to the depth of that team.
This will be big.
So Curtis Samuel from the Panthers signed a 3-year, $34.5 million deal with Washington, and Rivera was looking to trade for Samuel at the end of last year. Of course, Ron Rivera coming from the Carolina Panthers. Signed also the wide receiver Adam Humphries from the Titans, and Washington was struggling at the slot position. They had Sims in there, who was supposed to be all right, but never really panned out to be what people were expecting. And they had the existing assets at quarterback Kyle Allen and Taylor Heineke. So
Pass and pass.
Fitzpatrick will be there now as a 1-year, $10 million deal, sort of a holdover quarterback until they figure out what's going on there. But this is good news. It's a well-qualified bridge quarterback who also happens to be the best quarterback that McLaurin has ever had throwing him the football.
I like Fitzpatrick. He's always gotten a little bit left in him, it seems. So let's go for it.
I think he's 39 years old, if I remember that correctly. And here's a guy.
He's just a little older than us.
There was a lot of information about him maybe retiring at the end of the year, and he had some disappointing things with the Dolphins, where he'd go out and have a great game.
He's just a little younger than us.
And then Tagovailoa would come out the next game because the coaches didn't want him to feel like he wasn't the guy. Talk about like some emotional turmoil going on in Miami. Regardless,
that's gonna screw with the rookie. I can totally see Fitzpatrick being able to deal with that.
Yeah.
But that's gotta screw with the rookie. Thankfully, and we'll get to Miami later in the chat. They've figured out a lot of stuff down there.
They signed Lamar Miller as a running back, but that's sort of a depth move. They have a couple of pieces ahead of him that will obviously be taking more carries, including J.D. McKissick and Antonio Gibson. And Antonio Gibson, speaking of, should be leading this backfield, and with some new offensive line talent that they signed, a short-term solution at quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick, and all of the added wide receiver assets. And the wide receiver assets are probably the biggest thing that they've done here. I think that Antonio Gibson is in line for some good numbers, and I think you were
like I was saying, I think you're going to see a lot of receptions for him this year. So if you're in some sort of PPR league, I think that you need to bump him up a little bit higher than his ADP.
And then talking about management, we discussed Ron Rivera accepting the coaching position in Washington in January of 2020, which was the beginning of last year. But he also brought over Scott Turner, who is now the offensive coordinator, and a handful of other offensive staff positions from Carolina. Articles at the time were like, Ron Rivera leaves, brings all of the offensive staff of the Carolina Panthers to the Washington football team. It's no wonder, and again talking about Curtis Samuel, that he's a player that coaches love to put in all sorts of different situations. So both Scott and Ron were clamoring over Curtis and trying to get him on their team.
Yeah.
They were finally able to. A lot of people think that the deal that they got for him was even under what he's worth. I know that some people in the fantasy leagues that I was in played Curtis Samuel from week to week, and although he would have some games where he didn't get many points, there was a lot of games where he would score multiple touchdowns, be running the ball, getting passes. He's just kind of doing everything.
Yep.
So this is the year really to test, I think, whether the personnel changes over in Washington, both on the team and the coaching staff, are going to result in something positive, or if not, then there's going to be even more major changes going on there.
I think they're going to get at least another year with this coaching staff. They went to the playoffs last year, and they were only 7-9. They have a lot of room for improvement still. So unless the team totally tanks, I don't really see that happening. I think that they'll be doing, they'll get to stick around for a while.
Let's move on to Los Angeles.
So the Los Angeles Rams of St. Louis, they drafted their first pick overall was in round 2, pick number 57 overall, Tutu Atwell. His name is Chatarius Atwell. So we love the guys with the crazy names. He is a wide receiver. He is their first pick in the draft because they traded away their first round pick for the Jalen Ramsey deal. It wasn't just for him. There was some other stuff thrown in there as well. So Atwell's a speedster on the outside. He's a player who can be used to take the top off the defense. The Rams have not had a guy like that in a while. Maybe Brandon Cooks was. Maybe not at the end of his career after all those concussions. I guess it's not the end of his career, but the end of his tenure in Los Angeles anyways. So he has similar measurables, Atwell does, to Deshaun Jackson, who is a newly acquired player for the Rams. And I just think he's going to be a great new toy for their other new acquisition, Matt Stafford. Round 4, pick 141 overall. It was a compensatory pick. Jacob Harris, he's a wide receiver, listed as a tight end on some sites. Kind of a late pick, but I like the scouting report I read about this guy. He's physically basically the opposite of Atwell. He's 6'5", 219. So you got a guy that's similar to like an Antonio Brown or a Deshaun Jackson, where he's 5'9", 5'10", like 175. And then you got this guy who's 6'5", 219. He was drafted as a wide receiver, listed as a tight end on the CBS transaction site. So don't know exactly where he'll be playing on the field yet. But he started off as a soccer player. A lot of scouting reports compare him to basketball players rather than football players. So he does not really have the technical football pedigree, which I don't mind, because when you have a brilliant coach like Sean McVay, I feel like he can teach someone how to play football. It's the guys who have the natural athletic talent that don't know what to do with it yet that can really, explode on the scene from a 4th or a 5th round draft pick. Mm-hmm. So I think that this could be really interesting. This could definitely be a guy that you would want to pick in a dynasty draft in one of the later rounds. He should go drafted. He should be drafted in most dynasty leagues, I believe. He's quote borderline unguardable in the red zone. So I don't expect a lot out of Harris in his rookie year, but he could be a contributor on special teams, thus keeping him on the roster, earning him a bit more playing time. So I like this guy. Keep an eye out on Jacob Harris. And then you've got Jared Goff, who was traded to the Lions, so he's the departing player. Blake Bortles was declared a free agent. Josh Reynolds was declared a free agent. Gerald Everett declared a free agent. I don't think Bortles wound up anywhere. Reynolds went to Tennessee. Everett is in Seattle. Malcolm Brown is in Miami. So these guys have all departed the Rams for other places. But to me, it's the Rams getting rid of a bunch of dead weight. I only see improvements to their roster from these cuts. I think that you're going to see Cam Akers getting a ton of work this year because of the exit of Malcolm Brown. So this is huge news if you're Cam Akers owner already. You're looking at a guy who's probably an RB1 this year. So if you are able to acquire him cheaply right now for some draft picks or something cheap, someone who doesn't realize the better position that he's in right now.
Yeah, you can't acquire him cheaply, I don't think.
Probably not.
But yeah, towards the end of last year, he was doing so well, and now this year, I agree. Clearly, he's going to have a good year.
I think we're looking at 300 plus touches for this guy. So acquired free agents: Matthew Stafford, acquired via trade, but same difference. Deshaun Jackson, wide receiver, signed as a free agent. I'm really excited to see what Matt Stafford can do in the Sean McVay offense. It's an understatement, in my opinion, to say that Matt Stafford has been held back by the Detroit Lions. Stafford had only 4 winning seasons since he was drafted in 2009, but he has 38 game-winning drives. This guy is they left for the Broncos and the Jaguars, respectively. That's going to hurt the defense negatively in the short term. I get the feeling with the Bears that they've chopped into their defense a little bit too much over the last couple of years, and that's going to eventually, lead to a bad defensive year for the Bears, and they're going to have to address that and turn it all around. So Mitch Trubisky is now in Buffalo as backup quarterback. So more power to him. I hope that that Josh Allen stays healthy for their sake. So acquired free agents for the Bears. They signed Damian Williams, and that should improve the running back room, giving the Montgomery, Williams, Cohen trio a little bit more beef to them. And adding, obviously, we talked about Andy Dalton. So we're either going to get a full season from Andy Dalton with Fields as a guy who's going to learn, and that's if Andy Dalton plays well all year. I could totally see a scenario, however unlikely, where Andy Dalton does play well all year long, well enough to keep the job. If they go 11-6, then Andy Dalton's going to keep the job throughout the year, and then they'll just start Justin Fields next year. And we've seen guys who sit for a whole year have a lot of success in their career. It's just that there's a lot of impatience, a lot of thought to you're better off learning on the job anyways, and that's, I think, why a lot of these rookie quarterbacks wind up getting a lot of starts. So restructuring the management, you've got Sean Desai. Am I pronouncing that right? Desai. He is the Bears' new defensive coordinator. He is a Vic Fangio disciple, so that is a little bit of that magical Vic Fangio defense we saw from a couple years ago, returning to have some more success. Hopefully, they focus on causing turnovers. They focus on stopping the rush. If the Bears' defense can give their offense short fields, that is going to help both quarterbacks immensely. Whoever gets to play is going to help them huge.
Well said. Thank you for filling in. I also don't know if it's Sean Desai or Sean Desai. I'm not sure. Let's pronounce it Desai like acai.
Okay, acai. Desai.
I have no idea. But there is a website that tells you the pronunciation of players and coaches. And so I'm sure that we'll use that before our next broadcast and get it right. Or if anybody who's watching this now or afterwards knows how to pronounce that name, let me know.
You better believe I'm already Googling this, Dave.
Also, a question from Anthony in the chat room: is 2021 finally the year of Joe Mixon? Since we are not actually mentioning him in these teams, Cincinnati Bengals didn't make the particular cut for the 8 highest, most impacted teams. They did get.
They had some consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the offense is better there, and they put pieces around the offensive line. And so I think that Joe Mixon will do better than he has been recently. Now, the year
There's no Giovanni Bernard snapping at his heels.
Whether it's the year of Joe Mixon, I think we can safely say it's not the year of Joe Mixon. But he could end up being a low top 10 running back, and that is well within the possible outcomes that happen this year.
All right, here we go.
Decide.
We're going to rate that as moderate difficulty.
Got it.
Okay. On to the Miami Dolphins. So their new draft picks, round 1, pick 6. Now, they acquired tons of draft picks and dealt them out, and I'm not going to make sense of it here. If you go to the 2021 NFL Draft Wikipedia page, you can just hover over all of the trades, and it'll break it all down for you if you want to try and track it down. But what you're going to wind up with is one of those crazy conspiracy boards with strings going left and right, and Pepe Sylvia written across there, and they're going to tell you that half these people don't really exist.
Yeah.
So, good luck on trying to track it all. But what we do know is that round 1, pick 6, they drafted Jalen Waddle, wide receiver. He's the second wide receiver off the board in this year's draft. He went before his teammate Devontae Smith, who won the Heisman Trophy last year. So Waddle definitely has a lot of good pedigree to him as well. His size is going to make him a slot receiver most of the time, which makes sense because the Dolphins already have outside receivers. Waddle's scouting report gushes about his intangibles. My favorite line about the intangibles is that he is, quote, a tough, undersized receiver who looks like a kid who's been dominating the older kids at recess. This is from the Our Lads scouting services. All my quotes about the scouting reports have been coming from there. So if these intangibles can carry over to the NFL, he's going to do, pardon me, he'll be a favorite target of Tagovailoa pretty quickly, in my opinion, because quarterbacks love throwing to guys like that, guys who are going to fight for every single catch, guys who are always going to be fighting to get open, who are never going to quit on play. When plays break down, they're the guys who come back to the quarterback. This is going to be Jalen Waddle every play. So in round 3, pick number 81 overall, There is Hunter Long. He is a tight end. He is still unsigned, which was the only rookie in my research today who had not been signed yet. So I'm not sure if there's something behind that or if it is just a matter of paperwork. But he does have the skills to be both a blocker and a pass catcher at tight end. I think we're going to have to wait for him to get his turn on the field, though, because Mike Gesicki was a breakout player last year. I expect Gesicki to have success, continued success this year. Last year, he finished as a tight end 7 in fantasy football, half-point PPR. I believe he'll firmly be in the third tier of tight ends at this year's draft, considering you basically have, your Waller, Kelsey, and Kittle in the top, and you got a couple guys in the middle, and then Gesicki is right there at the top of that third tier. So the Dolphins also drafted Liam Eichenberg, an offensive tackle, 42nd overall. He should help protect Tua. I like what the Dolphins did in the draft, and then they drafted a ton of defense. And for a head coach like Brian, I can't even think of his name. I was looking at it all damn day.
I don't remember.
This makes great radio. Let me tell you, I can't remember the name of a guy. Brian Flores, the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Great defensive mind. He's got a lot of defensive toys to play with this year. Let's get a better defense to help out this offense. So, departing players, Ryan Fitzpatrick was a free agent. He left for Washington. DeAndre Washington declared a free agent. Matt Breida declared a free agent. Getting rid of Fitzgerald was inevitable after they drafted Tua last year. Mm-hmm. Getting rid of the dead weight in the running back room was necessary, although they didn't really replace it with any star talent. What they did is they picked up Malcolm Brown at running back. Fine. They have added Jacoby Brissett as a backup quarterback. I like Brissett as a guy who probably is not as talented as Tua, but has a lot of the same skill set as Tua, who has been in the league a lot longer, has been in several different systems, including the New England system, which I'm sure any New England coach who goes to coach somewhere else is trying to build the New England system somewhere else. So to have a guy like Brissett to help bring along Tua is only going to be a good thing in my opinion. And then they signed Will Fuller. So Fuller is probably the best of the free agent acquisitions on the team. So it's going to improve almost immediately because Fuller has one more game on his suspension left, which he got at the end of last year. So I like the combination of Fuller, Parker, and Waddle as their starting wide receivers to give Tua a much better look on the field, including Gesicki. I suppose you'd have to include him in the pass catching group anyways.
I'm just questionable about Will Fuller because of the fact that he's only played for the one team, obviously had a lot of chemistry with Deshaun Watson, and it's difficult for me to believe that kind of long field stretching, almost always big long touchdown receptions is going to translate to a new quarterback. Like we talked about guys like Mike Wallace, who was also on the Dolphins, but then didn't do so well for them in particular. It's certainly possible that Fuller does well. I just
think he's of the free agent pickups, he's the best, and he will definitely be a starter.
I don't disagree with you there. Yeah,
and with Parker, at first I could see Fuller being a focus of the opposing defenses, mm-hmm. But if Parker doesn't suck, which he's on a slow march to not sucking.
Hey, you're excited about Parker because his value trending has gone slowly up, right?
So we
you have him in Dynasty, like it's happening.
We asked a question at the beginning of the show. If you weren't here to join us at the beginning of the show, we said, who is a player on your Dynasty team that you can't seem to cut? And for 2 years, that guy on my team was Devontae Parker, and I did not cut him, and he is still on my team.
But you waited long enough for him to actually have value.
I did, and he has value now.
That's good stuff.
So, I imported him preseason 2015.
Nice.
This is year 6 he's been on my team. So let's do it. Let's go, Devontae Parker.
Absolutely.
Then you've got Malcolm Brown. He's probably going to be in a committee with Myles Gaskin. Do you see that shaking out any other way, really?
I'm not sure what will happen in the backfield there.
Maybe whoever shows that they're any good gets the job, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so management restructuring. This is interesting. Last season, the offensive coordinator Chan Gailey retired. So this year they have co-offensive coordinators. I've never seen this before. George Godsey, formerly the tight ends coach on Miami, and Eric Studsville, formerly the running back coach on Miami. And I cannot recall a situation with co-coordinators on offense or defense. I know that you'll get a situation like you had in Kansas City a few years ago where Andy Reid was the head coach and he called the plays, and then you had Matt Nagy as the offensive coordinator designing the offense. So but there was a clear pecking order there. Here you have co-coordinators. I don't know who's supposed to call the plays. I don't know how they want this to play out at all.
Right.
And Brian Flores is a defensive guy, so it's not like he's going to be the one calling plays. So this is going to be interesting. There's a lot of talent on offense now. This is when they need their franchise quarterback to take a big step up. The second year is supposed to be that year for quarterbacks to be able to know if it's going to be a guy that they can use for the next 10 years or if they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. So lots of interesting stuff going on in Miami. But take us up the coast, Dave.
So we have not one but two teams from New York, back to back. We're going to start with the Jets. But just real quickly, there was another question in the chat room about Ezekiel Elliott, and again, I don't think we're covering him anywhere else. And is he going to kind of return to form? Anthony asks if he's going to come back in a major way. And what I find interesting about this discussion is there's a subreddit on Reddit called Dynasty FF, and I like that particular subreddit because it centers around Dynasty conversations. Now, in every forum that exists, there's going to be some people that are idiots and some people that are not adding to the positivity of any discussion. But what I liked about this conversation, someone asked about Ezekiel weeks or months ago, I don't remember, and someone said, well, he's in the best shape of his life according to the news. And then someone else responded, yeah, every player in the NFL is in the best shape of their lives in June and July and August of the season that they're about to play.
Great health. Everyone's feeling wonderful. Everyone just got back from Cabo.
Yeah. So what I will say is I think that with Dak Prescott coming back and with Dallas in general feeling like they're going to be an okay team, they still have most of their components in place. I don't see why Ezekiel Elliott can't be a top-tier running back. But we saw some horrible things happen with him last year. I might chalk those up to the team just being in shambles. And so I would not have him as my RB1 in a redraft league. But if I own him in Dynasty, I would feel pretty good about him coming back and doing better than he did last year. How about you, Jason?
Yes, I feel a lot better with him this year as long as Dak Prescott can be the quarterback. I think that's the key here because he played 15 games, but his yards per game were down almost 20 yards, and he had way fewer carries last year as well. He just didn't have the same opportunities, and everything he did when he touched the ball was less because there was nothing there for him because it was the only focus of the opposing defense.
Yeah.
So the one thing I worry about is that he has in 5 years 1,413 carries and 241 receptions.
Yeah.
And he's averaging more than 300 touches per year over 5 years. That is unsustainable. And if you have him in Dynasty, I think that you trade him if he starts out high.
That's not a bad thing to do.
And you ask for a king's ransom still.
Yeah.
But you trade him if he starts out hot because, look, he may be Adrian Peterson and carry this on for another 5 years. But let's just pretend that there's only one Adrian Peterson. Okay? And Ezekiel Elliott can only do this for 7 years.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather have 3 more draft picks to take a shot at the next Ezekiel Elliott than only a little bit more Ezekiel Elliott left?
Yeah, I think you try for the championship, you try to do well, you try to get far, and then if you can't do it and you're at the very end of the career, you take as much as you can.
If you're a top-notch team in your league and you've got Zeke, you probably got to roll. If you're not one of the top 2 or 3 teams in your league, you got to seriously consider trading him when he's hot.
100% right. And it's actually the same in football. So you'll see a lot of players even being traded as long as they're like on the last year of their contract or even before that. They could sign a new contract but still be traded 2 years into that.
That's correct.
If the team feels like they're not going in a good direction.
That's correct.
Good advice. So the Jets, new draft picks. The general manager, Joe Douglas, ended up with 10 players from the 21 draft. They had a ton of people.
Yeah.
There was a lot of wheeling and dealing. They made 3 total trades in that draft to pick up those players. And while they picked up quite a few rookies that should provide talent to the organization for quite a while, the most high profile of them was, of course, the number 2 overall pick, which was Zach Wilson from BYU. And it can be said that Wilson didn't face as tough a competition as other quarterbacks that played for the Big Ten or SEC, because he did play for Brigham Young. And that's 100% true. There's nothing that really can be said to counter that. They're playing teams that aren't as good.
It's true.
However, the guy was absolutely lights out.
But yeah, sometimes great players come from small schools.
Yeah. And
or non-powerhouse schools.
Great that he played for starters 3 years, something a lot of college quarterbacks don't have on their record. 56 to 15 touchdown interception ratio, due only to the fact that in his sophomore year he had 9 interceptions. I think in the other 2 years he had 3 each, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
You love this news, right? They haven't had success, the Jets, at quarterback over the past 20 years, despite drafting 3 quarterbacks that were all in the first round over that time in Pennington, Sanchez, and Darnold. So this is the 4th one, and maybe 4th time's the charm.
Sure, let's rewrite the old cliches.
Wide receiver Elijah Moore was selected as the 34th pick of the 2nd round. He's super fast.
34th overall pick.
Athletic receiver who may have been the top receiver in college last year, if not for Devonta Smith's season, which I think you brought up earlier. There are some concerns with his build. He's just 5'9", 178 pounds, similar to, like he said, an Antonio Brown, someone like that. But all the scouting reports say the toughness there, the physical ability that he has. He's not a diminutive 5'9". He just happens to be a shorter guy. But he's been drawing comparisons to Antonio Brown. In reviewing film, I can definitely see why. I looked over this past week at 3 or 4 games that he played in, and the guy just looks incredible. Round 4, pick 107 overall, Michael Carter, running back from North Carolina. He profiles as a good overall complementary back, should be utilized right away in the Jets' offense. Looking at their running back room, he might even climb to the top of the running back depth chart by later this season. I can see that being an incredibly good later round pick in redraft leagues or in dynasty rookie leagues, because people might sort of fly by him. But the Jets, with a resurgence of offense, could have a running back that actually profiles as an RB2, RB3 that you could get for a much lower value. Departing players, they traded Sam Darnold to the Panthers for 3 draft picks. And the biggest free agent acquisitions, they signed Corey Davis to a 3-year deal with $27 million guaranteed, basically making him their wide receiver 1 going forward, which is arguably their biggest need. Now, they did get rid of their quarterback and get a new one, so they
they addressed that need.
They've addressed that. But Corey Davis has been doing really well this past year, specifically with Tennessee. So I do think that that there could be some real possibilities of a WR1 Corey Davis happening.
Okay.
Well,
it just sounds crazy. I agree with you.
Sometimes receivers take the 3, 4, 5 years. We always say there's like a 2-year, 3-year wide receiver breakout, and we were waiting for Corey Davis forever.
Yeah.
But hey, it seems like he was able to demonstrate it, so maybe it'll work. You're right. It sounds crazy when you think of Corey Davis.
Just hearing it spoken out loud.
Tevin Coleman was added on a 1-year contract and will clearly have a part in that running back by committee the Jets are assembling. That includes Michael Carter, that we talked about earlier, Ty Johnson, and LaMichael Pirine. Now, getting tight end Tyler Kroft, just a 1-year depth signing, and acquiring wide receiver Keelan Cole that we mentioned earlier from the Jaguars, those are really just bolstering their existing wide receiver room. And I'm really happy with the Jets having done a good job with that. Not to mention the fact that they secured Jameson Crowder for more time on the Jets, and he's one of the best possession receivers that there are in the game.
Yeah.
So they actually have a team that looks like it's shaping up to be not Jet-like, They have a new coach, Robert Saleh, and he's
Saleh.
Robert Saleh, and his all gas, no break philosophy might just be what the Jets need to climb out of that hole that we've been talking about over the last few regimes. So he was recently the San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator, and the offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, who's the brother of Packers coach Matt LaFleur, is going to have a West Coast Shanahan-style offense because he trained under Shanahan as a disciple of him in Cleveland, Atlanta, and San Francisco. So this is the best.
We're talking about Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
Not Mike.
This is the best new Jets offensive resurgence that I've seen since I've been paying real attention to football. It doesn't mean it's going to work, but it means that it might.
Sure. I mean, we thought that when Le'Veon Bell joined the team that things would happen. But no, I really like this. I'm reading the scouting report for Zach Wilson, and he's really just like, it sounds like he has an arm probably better than anybody else in the draft. Maybe Trevor Lawrence would rival him, but that's it.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Is that here's a guy who is going to be very, very difficult to defend against those long passes.
Excellent deep ball placement, maintains accuracy on the move, go through reads on time, won't delay, won't rush, solid internal clock. Like, everything they say about him is exactly what you'd want. Let's just hope that the Jets don't ruin this guy.
Yep, and they kind of almost did with Darnold. They started seeing ghosts out there, so.
Well, I mean, we can give some credit to Bill Belichick there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, anybody else to worry about in the Jets, or shall we move on?
No, just the New York Football Giants.
All right, the New York Football Giants. Their first pick was round 1, pick 20, Kadarius Toney. So the Giants did trade down, which is something that the Giants GM almost never did. I think this may be the very first time that he traded down to acquire more draft picks in his career as the GM there. So we mentioned that trade already where the Bears got Fields. The Giants upgraded their wide receiver position, the place where they've been very weak ever since the departure of Odell Beckham Jr. So Toney, Kadarius Toney, that is, he's a guy who's going to line up all over the field. He's going to catch the ball, carry the ball, return kicks and punts. He's got great agility, or as they say on the Arlad scouting report, he can make tacklers miss in a phone booth. So he's had off the field issues, and that, being in New York City, is not going to be easy to avoid necessarily. So he's going to have to curb those tendencies. He's going to have to focus on football in order to really be a success. So it seems like maybe they got a little bit of a deal with him because of that. So if they can get this guy to focus, if they can get him to just be a football player and not, a big shot in New York City, then he can probably be a really great player on their team. So they spent their next 3 picks on defensive players. They took a running back in the 6th round. I don't think that Saquon Barkley is worried about his job. So, departing players from the football Giants. Joe Webb cut from the team. He was a backup quarterback, special teams guy. Colt McCoy was a backup quarterback as well. Alfred Morris was a running back. Deion Lewis running back. Wayne Gallman running back. Devonta Freeman running back. So you can see here, we cut the entire running back room that was not named Saquon Barkley. And the thing is that entire room did not add up to Saquon Barkley's torn ACL. So they did not have very much talent whatsoever. They cut Golden Tate as well. That was sort of an experiment that seemed like it was going to go places and just went nowhere. So as far as the cuts go, Gallman's really the only player of note. Because when he was the backup for Barkley, he was a relevant player. But they're going to streamline the running back room behind Barkley. They've added a bunch of guys there in free agency to sort of fill in. This way now you've got Daniel Jones, the main focus of the offense. They've got him more weapons at wide receiver, and they've got a healthy Saquon Barkley back. That's going to be huge.
Yeah, I feel like Tate is just going to sign maybe another 1-year only deal, that kind of thing. He's reaching the end of his career.
As soon as somebody tears something in camp, he's going to get signed somewhere.
Yeah.
So Kenny Galladay is the big acquisition on this team as far as free agency goes. He signed a 4-year contract. He's a wide receiver from Detroit. Raquel Armstead, I believe, is a running back. Was he with Jacksonville but never actually played? Am I remembering this correctly?
Might be. It's probably one of those guys I had on my dynasty squad,
but just never played yet. So there's some talent there, I'm sure. Just we haven't seen it yet. Corey Clement at running back. Who else are the running backs they signed? Devontae Booker. So not a lot of big names, but they don't need them. They've got Saquon Barkley. They also signed Kelvin Benjamin, is someone I don't expect to make the 53-man roster, but he will take them to all the good buffets in New York City. And then you got Kyle Rudolph at tight end, and Mike Glennon, backup quarterback, and John Ross, a wide receiver who could be a bubble guy. So I like the addition of Galladay to the wide receivers on this team. So you've got Galladay and Slayton lining up on the outside, Barkley in the backfield. You're going to take a lot of pressure off of Daniel Jones, and then you're going to be able to throw their new guy, Kadarius Toney, in there at the slot, and you're going to have a lot of talent on the field. All of a sudden, you've got 4 weapons.
Yep.
And more if you count the tight ends. So now you've got Kyle Rudolph and Evan Ingram backing up. Evan Ingram, a guy due for touchdown regression, meaning he's going to go up. He only had 1 touchdown last year.
Yeah, they've been talking about how he's still going to maintain his high part in the offense. He's going to have a lot of targets, etc.
Yeah.
There's a whole contingency of fantasy football heads who think that Evan Ingram will go down in value. But in my opinion, for this kind of a team that is doing well and bolstering their offense, it seems like there's no reason for a guy like him to do badly, unless. Of course, he continues to have drops because that was his main issue previously.
Sure.
That's like Deontay
something
Johnson
you can work
on the Steelers, who's apparently playing with a tennis ball machine, just firing really fast tennis balls at him.
That's what I'm saying. You can work on that. So last year, the Giants were 31st in both offensive points and offensive yards. This year, I expect them to be in the top half of the league. They've greatly improved their offense. So as far as the management goes, there are no changes at the top for the Giants. Both coordinators are the same. The head coach is the same. Jason Garrett is their offensive coordinator. He is a great offensive mind. He's a former head coach and a professional clapper. So he's got the best offensive roster that he's had, I think, since 2016, which was the rookie year for Dak, the rookie year for Zeke. He still had Des Bryant on the team. Still had a younger Jason Witten. So I think this is the best talent that he's had to work with since that team.
Well, all right. Some of these teams that we're talking about may have improved, but they're still not going to make it to the playoffs.
No, that was we talked about a 1-win team. We talked about a 4-win team.
Yeah.
I think we've only talked about 3 teams that have made the playoffs last year, and one of those teams wasn't even a 500 team.
Yeah,
and the other one was the Chicago Bears.
And some of those teams, like Washington, only made the playoffs because of the horribleness of their division.
Exactly.
So yeah, most of these teams are not.
The Rams are like the only team that deserved to make the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
That we're talking about.
Well, the Rams still have 5 or 6 years to go after making the Super Bowl and just performing so horribly in order to save any kind of face or have anyone forget that.
I think that the Rams with Stafford are going to be a different team.
Yeah, 100%. The last team on our list is the Los Angeles Chargers, and the new draft picks, like the Washington football team that I talked about. The Chargers decided to prioritize offensive line and defensive players in the first 2 rounds of this year's draft, including drafting cornerback Asante Samuel Jr., who is apparently just like his dad, which is super scary because the Pro Bowl playing Asante Samuel was a very good defender. So all the scouting reports and everything have said basically that this guy is going to be in the news, in the NFL news, and he's going to be out there doing well. But we're not talking too much about defensive players, so I would like to talk about Justin Herbert and the guys on the Chargers.
Oh, yeah.
With Keenan Allen and Mike Williams already playmakers on the field, the Chargers kind of surprisingly decided to draft another wide receiver. In round 3, they took Josh Palmer from Tennessee. And he should be eased in and may end up securing the wide receiver 3 position by the midseason or the end of the year, because the 2 guys that are in his way are Jalen Guyton and Tyron Johnson. And those aren't names that you hear called out on the field very often. So it's interesting to note that Mike Williams is in a contract year. He's getting paid $15 million this season because they kept, pushing his money to the end of his contract.
Okay.
But they still want him, so they're not going to let him go. They're going to let him play out, maybe even re-sign him. But what's interesting about the situation is that they drafted Palmer. So, depending on how Palmer and Williams perform, Josh Palmer may end up as the WR2 on the Chargers in 2022. It's possible. it's an interesting situation to look at. Keenan Allen, for example, just signed a contract with the Chargers for 4 years as an extension in 2020. So he'll be around for a little while, but Mike Williams is either going to secure his place there or maybe be going somewhere else next year. Also picked in the 3rd round, tight end Trey McKitty from Georgia was added as depth, and so was 6th round selection running back Larry Runtree, the 3rd out of Missouri. It should be noted that last year pretty much all the running backs on the Chargers roster were injured at one point or another. So it's not a big wonder to me that they added more depth, but a 6th round running back is probably not going to provide any value on your team, dynasty or otherwise. Trey McKitty, though, is an interesting guy to think about because apparently his scouting reports have been pretty positive, and it's certainly possible that the Chargers are looking for another person to take over for Hunter Henry having left. I will mention that they just recently acquired Jared Cook from the Saints, but only for a 1-year deal. He's definitely the pass-catching and red zone target replacement for Hunter Henry. But he's only on a 1-year deal, and he's an older tight end. So McKitty, look at him in dynasty leagues, especially as perhaps someone that could be groomed to be the tight end there in what is a pass-happy offense on the Chargers. Departing players, quarterback Tyrod Taylor went to the Texans, who might actually start there, depending on all this Watson stuff that's going on. And tight ends Steven Anderson and Hunter Henry, like I mentioned earlier, also departed. Did you find out some interesting information?
I see Steven Anderson still on the depth chart for the Chargers.
No, I think he either departed or wasn't re-signed. But don't look at depth charts because they're not updated.
Well, it's more of a roster, but anyways. No, I don't really have any. I don't really have anything to add with the Chargers, to be honest with you.
Okay, new coach from you mentioned him earlier, Brandon Staley. Couldn't have landed in a better spot, from my opinion. And the offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi, who's the grandson of Vince Lombardi and the former quarterbacks coach for the Saints, is apparently going to have a lot more put on the quarterback this year, according to Justin Herbert, who was being asked about the new offense. I guess Drew Brees is also a guy who might come and help him out, which is a really nice thing to just kind of have on the docket.
That's interesting. And Brees did originally start with the Chargers,
right? And then he's friends with the Lombardis, and everything might come up Herbert this year. The Chargers were also graded by PFF, Pro Football Focus, I think it is, as having the most improved offensive line in the NFL over last year. And I'm regularly seeing the Chargers in the top 10 of this season's early power rankings, which is super impressive to me because the Chargers had a rookie quarterback. They had a coach that got dipped. You know, they had a lot of issues in some of their positions that were filled up by excellent drafting, free agent acquisition, and the management restructuring that they've done has been very good, in my opinion. So it wouldn't be that surprising to see the Chargers make a run even this early in Herbert's development.
I agree. I like the Chargers this year. A lot of good football going to be played in Los Angeles this year. And they got the new stadium, so they both play there.
So, honorable mentions of other teams that we didn't include. We had the 49ers on there. We had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have managed to keep their team nearly exactly the same since last year.
So it's kind of the opposite of what we were talking about. But they get an honorable mention for, winning the Super Bowl and keeping the same team.
And both the Minnesota Vikings and the Cleveland Browns, who both spent time concentrating on the acquisition of depth and elite skill on their defense, have improved themselves a great deal as well, which is scary, but not a lot to talk about on the offensive side.
Yeah, the Patriots are going to look really different, I think, with a couple of tight ends. We can bring those up in a second. And the Eagles, I think, with Jalen Hurt being a starter. Should be interesting.
I got no respect for the Eagles.
I don't either. And they're one of the teams that is picked to be the worst record this year.
Oh, man. Wouldn't it be great if the Jets were like a 500 team and the Eagles...
I think the Texans and the Eagles are some of the teams that you can bet on to have 0 wins.
Yeah, if you're doing some gambling, I'm sure we'll put some on the website, drinkfive.com. Regularly we have columns about that, but generally there's a team or two that is just good to bet against all the time.
So players on the move that we did not talk about. Julio Jones was traded to the Titans after some bizarre offseason stuff. So, do you think that the Titans are going to be able to use Jones the right way, or is he kind of washed up now?
I think AJ Brown is amazing.
Yeah.
I think the Titans shouldn't have gotten rid of Jonnu Smith. I think that was a mistake on their part.
I think if they knew they could acquire Julio Jones, they would not have gotten
It's
rid
a
of him.
different thing. The tight end, they don't have like a good blocking tight end on their team any longer, which is a problem.
Yeah, Ferkser is meh.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people are thinking that Ferkser's a sleeper candidate, and I just don't think so. But to answer your question, AJ Brown is awesome. Whenever you have someone who commands respect like Julio, as long as he's healthy and everything is going well with him and Tannehill, there's no reason why they can't both create opportunities for each other.
Yeah, I think they have a chance to both get 1,000 yards.
That would be cool. That reminds
It's
me
a
of like
chance, not a great chance.
like Andre Johnson and like old Houston Texans stuff. And
Yeah,
yeah. Let's
let's see it.
yeah.
So Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, both tight ends signed by the Patriots. Do you think that Belichick is trying to recreate a Gronk Hernandez thing, or is this something completely new?
I think Belichick is an old guy that wants to go back to things that worked. So I think yes.
Oh,
However, the strange thing about the Hunter Henry Jonnu thing is that both guys are pass catching tight ends.
yeah.
And I think that Bill Belichick likes to confuse defenses, and so I feel like if you have either of those guys on your team, it's likely that he's going to pretend to use them all the time, but not really use them. That's what I think.
I agree with you.
He's like
I think he's
setting
trying
them
something
up.
new,
Yeah.
and that's going to be part of it. So Carson Wentz is now the signal caller for the Colts. Wentz got benched for a rookie last year, but can he find the old magic with his old coach, Frank Reich?
What do you think?
I think that the Colts are a much better team than the Eagles.
Yeah, they were almost on my list of improved teams.
Yeah, and I think that because they didn't have as many changes, they didn't quite make the list.
Mm-hmm.
So, what they have? Oh, they had Phillip Rivers last year.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a slight downgrade from Phillip Rivers, but I think in a couple of years he could be, as good as a Phillip Rivers who has just touched the system. Not Phillip Rivers in general as in his prime, but I think that it's a good idea to reunite a coach with a quarterback who both had success together.
Yeah, and Carson Wentz deserves another shot, but it's so weird to me to think of a guy who was doing so well, and it hasn't been that long and fell so far. A lot of times those players are just losing interest, or they've lost their spark, or they've had some athletic drop-offs. I think the Colts are still a good team defensively and have a lot of offensive
A
components.
change of location could really go a long way there.
Yeah, like Indy, it's a great place to live, I'm sure.
Speaking of great places to live, moving from Los Angeles to Detroit is one Jared Goff.
Oh, poor Goff.
So the Lions finally let Stafford go. Sweet relief for the Stafford family. So now they can fail a new quarterback. It's Jared Goff. Can he possibly have any success in Detroit? The answer is no.
Who I think will have a lot of success in Detroit?
The newest Motown artist?
No. I think TJ Hawkinson is going to be a good tight end for a really long time.
Oh yeah, I could totally see that.
But I'm pretty sure the rest of Detroit.
You often get good tight ends on bad teams.
I'm pretty sure the rest of Detroit is not going to be very good. Yeah. And the last person that you mentioned is Emmanuel Sanders, so I'll give this one to you to comment on. But for the Bills, they just take away John Brown, put in Sanders, playing opposite of all-world wide receiver Stephon Diggs, who led the league in both receptions and receiving yards last year.
Yeah.
So do you think Sanders can actually stay healthy, which is something that John Brown couldn't do, and warrant a wide receiver kind of position, like a wide receiver 3 flex on your roster?
Yeah, I think that Sanders is going to be in a great spot here with Josh Allen. Josh Allen loves to fling the ball down the field. Emmanuel Sanders found a way to get open. He had like 7 touchdowns last year, something like that.
And 1B, do you have Sanders on your dynasty team?
Do I still have him on my team? I think I might. I know he was on my team before.
I always wonder if there's like a subconscious thought in the back of your head, like, this player could do well. Oh yeah, he's on my bench.
You know what I do in Dynasty is I get Steelers receivers. I have my starters in week 16 last year were Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, and Emmanuel Sanders.
It was probably great.
I don't know how well I did. I was the first overall pick, so my team wasn't very good.
Well, the Steelers know how to raise wide receivers. I'll tell you that much.
That's very true.
And the Steelers are not one of the most improved teams this year, as so many other teams are not as well. However, they did pick up Harris in the draft, which a lot of people think may be one of the running backs that have the most carries this next year. So I'm excited about that as a Steelers fan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too high on the Steelers this year. I don't know
You're crazy.
that Ben Roethlisberger can do very much. If Ben Roethlisberger can play well, the Steelers will go as far as he can take them.
Yeah.
But if he does not play well, they are going to struggle to be 500.
Well, I think, as they always do, they will probably surprise you in their end result.
Look, Mike Tomlin is a top 3 coach in the league. I mean, I might want Andy Reid or Bill Belichick ahead of him, but that's it. I think I'd take Tomlin before Pete Carroll, and before anybody else.
Anyone who is able to keep Antonio Brown under wraps
For that long, yeah.
you know he's a good coach in the locker room. Yeah. So, final thoughts from you, or anything else you want to add? I think that this particular list was interesting. As we progress, and a few weeks do another one of these shows, perhaps someone out there has ideas for us. We, of course, have a million things that we could discuss about developing teams, camp battles, all sorts of things like that. But if you have any specific ideas, leave them in the chat room or email me at dave@drinkfive.com or jason@drinkfive.com.
You can drop us a line on Twitter at drinkfive. We're on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Yep.
And, great chat, Dave. It's really, really excellent to be back. I think that you guys will hear from us again in a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks at the most. And, not promising anything at the moment. However, it's really nice to be researching this stuff again. Between now and the next show, we will probably have done 2 dynasty drafts, 2 rookie drafts. So we'll have a lot to talk about this year's upcoming rookies. And maybe we'll dive in a little bit more to all the rule changes and how you can look at adjusting your league. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll do like a whole segment on administrative stuff.
Yeah, I mean, are there issues that you're having as a commissioner, or things that you haven't thought of, or different kinds of leagues that you might be interested in doing?
Oh, I'd love to answer questions. If people have problems that come up as a commissioner, I've been commissioning leagues for over 10 years now. I have multiple leagues every year, and I've seen it all at this point.
Well, maybe we'll do
I'm not saying that I haven't handled it all in the exact way that I would handle it today, but you know what? You learn and you do things better the second time around.
It's a learning process.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Check us out again and follow us on. You'd subscribe to us on YouTube. You'd follow us on Twitter. Give us a review anywhere that you listen to this podcast. Give us 5-star review, please, even if you don't like it. And
we're like your
helps us.
Uber drivers that just talk about fantasy football.
Yeah, I mean,
which I wouldn't mind if there was an Uber driver I had that just talked about fantasy on the way to the airport.
Yeah,
I would love that.
The Uber driver lets you listen to the Joe Rogan podcast the whole way, lets you smoke in the back, whatever. You can smoke a cigarette if you give us a 5-star review. I give you permission to smoke in the studio.
But you can smoke in your own home while you're watching the video.
I give you permission to smoke in your own home.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Jason, and good night, folks.
Cheers. Thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat room.
With that, we'll take you out with a little buffer music.
I suppose I should remember to do that. We're a little rusty in the final week of the year, or the first week of the year.